Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for tuning in. Joining me today is Nancy Tertre. Nancy is an attorney specialized in securities litigation who became a trained psychic detective working with law enforcement and victims' families. She is the author of nonfiction books on diverse topics. So Nancy, I'm so glad to sit down and be with you. Very interesting life you had so far, and I'm sure it'll continue in different ways going forward. So you went to college, and then what happened?
Oh my goodness. The nutshell version is I went to college, I got out, I ended up becoming sort of a business entrepreneur. I owned and operated a healthcare industry newspaper, a small printing company, a 242-bed skilled nursing home in Brooklyn. I ran the U.S. operations of our French Limoges porcelain manufacturing business. And I became a securities litigator, an attorney also in the middle of that. And then I did sort of a very interesting detour in my life. It was a major detour. And I got very, very interested in all different aspects of intuition and I was trying originally, since I'm trained and certified for more than 20 years in intuitive Gestalt psychotherapy, I was trying to go into that topic from the point of view of psychology. And that wasn't happening because, at least if you go back maybe 10 years ago, psychologists were really not interested in intuition.
Yes, that's true.
And I studied a lot of neuroscience to see if the neuroscientists could tell me about the structure, the brain structure of intuition. They stay far away from that. They're beginning to dip their toes in it now, I would say. But they didn't want to because it was considered too subjective. So then I ended up exploring, and this has taken me a couple of decades. I've been talking to psychics, psychic detectives, mediums, medical intuitives, all different types of remote viewers. I'm also trained in all different aspects of remote viewing, which was the government's so-called psychic spying program. So that's sort of and I also had a CBS radio show for a while.
So medical intuitives do what exactly?
Medical intuitives I studied with a guy, he's a Russian doctor known as Dr. X-ray.
Okay.
Because he's known for seeing through the human body and then being able to, you can't use the word diagnose because that's not legal, but you can identify health issues potentially by using your third eye, your psychic vision, to see what's going on with a person. I've also done that, and I do that with people, and I've been told many times that I've been able to identify issues that people have seen. I had one guy, a client, who he had gone to 10 different doctors all over Europe. Nobody had identified the issue.
So it's a diagnostician approach. Is it a treatment, even though you can't say the word treat? It's just diagnosis.
If you want to put together the psychic, you can't use the word treatment either.
Improvement.
Improvement. I do a form of energy healing work. It's not Reiki. I'm not trained in any of those things. This is a purely natural thing that I do. People have told me that they have unusual reactions, like electrical shocks. I never touch people. I'm always about 5 inches off the surface of them. They have told me they can sometimes feel, it feels like tendons moving. Warmth always. Sometimes magnetism, electricity, just all different things.
In your opinion, what's happening?
Well, we all have a biofield. Okay, and we have several different. You could get into all of the different theories of, chakras and auras and all that kind of thing, but we have different electromagnetic outputs and probably some type of unidentified so far bio energy. I'm going to leave it at that. And we all interact. Everybody on Earth. I mean, we're interacting right now.
Energetically.
Energetically.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I can sense it. But with everybody.
With everybody. And when you do something like remote viewing, that is the ability to perceive usually locations, events, or people that are identified only by a target number. You can see them across the other side of the world with amazing amounts of specificity. You can go to something off planet. That's been done many, many times.
In what way?
You can view things that are happening. My mentor his name was Ingo Swann, and in 1973 he worked with two laser physicists at the Stanford Research Institute, and they set up the remote viewing program for the CIA and for military intelligence. And it was later put together with what they called the Stargate program.
What was that?
That was the Army's program at Fort Meade to do remote viewing. But my mentor, Ingo, is quite famous for having viewed the dark side of the moon and seeing civilization there. He was famous for viewing, I believe it was Jupiter, and he identified the different geological and atmospheric aspects of it back before it was, I forget how many years before they were able to actually identify those things with satellites and that kind of thing. And he was right. So it can be done.
So from your point of view, what did you learn or what abilities did he develop in himself that made that information available to him?
Well, he was a natural. I'm not a natural.
Well, whether you're a natural or an apprentice.
No. He was born that way, and if I was born that way, I have no memory of it, and I was never psychic in my life. It was only through training that I became psychic. I trained for 10 years with a very well-known psychic detective. We worked with law enforcement, usually on missing persons or homicide cases. That's still work that I do. I told you I trained in remote viewing. I trained, a little bit of the medical intuitive work, mediumship. I'm a trained medium.
What is a medium?
A medium is somebody who's able to communicate with spirit. Usually people have passed on.
Would you call those souls or spirit? Or what?
People are very picky about whether you call it spirit or soul.
Okay.
And sometimes some people say, well, it's actually two different things. And so I don't want to get into that.
Well, going back to helping the police side of things, what kind of information would you be able to help them get that they can't get on their own?
I've been able to identify locations where it was my impression that the bodies were left, and in many cases that's been the only location where the police have been either dredging or excavating or looking for the bodies of the missing people. I've identified suspects. I sometimes am able to sketch them, and then sometimes the police or the detectives will drive me around, and so I can actually see who their suspect is and see what the match is. Sometimes you can...
Stay right there. What does that mean? See the suspect and
well, in other words, if
suspect and the mass there. Are you looking for something or sensing something?
If I've already identified them, I've described them.
Mentally?
Yeah.
Because you said he's 5'10" or whatever.
And sketched the picture and whatever. And then they say, yeah, that actually is our primary suspect. Come with us and let's take a look at him. So I've had to go out and look at serial killers, which is a very spooky kind of thing. And I've looked at former law enforcement people. So it's kind of an interesting...
What are you looking for when they want your opinion on the suspect in real life. What sensations do you get that says, aha, it's him, or I don't know, and maybe not him?
That's what I've spent decades trying to understand myself and to explain to other people. It's really, really difficult because we have something that I call brain chatter. So our brains are always talking to us. We talk to ourselves. We even have a voice usually, or several. Yeah. And you have to learn how to identify what is really a sensory impression as opposed to a thought. Because one is intellectual, logical, analytical, left brain, and the other is right brain, illogical, usually nonsensical, and you don't know why you got it. But when in your brain chatter mixes all of these together, so you have sensory impressions, you have personal thoughts, you have your own past experience, and it all gets sort of glued together. The way that you kind of tease it apart is you force yourself to stop thinking. And that's not an easy, especially for somebody who I like to think. So it's been a real challenge for me.
So when you see someone from the back or the front who's a suspect, is their energy, your impression of them, hot, cold, dense, light? Is there anything you pay attention to other than repetition?
If I'm looking at a suspect, the last thing in the world I want to do is to connect with their energy.
Oh, really?
I do not want to connect with it.
Because?
No.
Say why. I think
because it's awful. I mean, I've had to work on cases involving pedophiles and child murderers and that kind of thing. And there are photographs you cannot unsee. There are images in your mind you cannot unsee. And after you get into that place where either you're identifying as the victim or you're identifying as the suspect, suddenly you're in their energy. And either way, it's not a pleasant thing. That's why a lot of psychics won't do this kind of work.
Because of distortion.
It's
when they sit in themselves as a result of memory to exposure, whether it's photos or whatever.
If you're very, very sensitive and you're very empathic, which allows you to feel those energies, it's really strong when negative energies like that come into your own energy field.
You have to push them away, or at least not.
Or a lot of people do cleansing, ritual type cleansing, energy cleansing type things.
What were you trying to learn when you went to Russia?
Oh, I was trying to learn something I already know how to do, but I wanted to learn how the Russians do it. I wanted to learn how to move objects with my mind in the Russian method. I already knew how to do it. In fact, I brought you, if you're interested, I brought you a couple of things that I have actually done in the past. This is a solid steel rod that I bent in front of a group with physicists. And as you can see, it was already proven to be unbendable.
Right. Yes, I feel the resistance.
And I've got in here someplace.
You are remarkable.
I have a very...
I love the combination.
I'll find it another time. I have another twisted up spoon that's wound around itself. So you can melt metal with your mind. You can move objects in a room. You can make, in Russia, what we were doing was making pinwheels, paper spirals actually, that were suspended under glass vases that were turned upside down, making them spin. Now that's all we did there, which I thought was pretty rudimentary, and they didn't really teach us too much. What they did do is they shockingly made us do about 6 hours of boot camp physical exercises every day. We had to ask permission at all times, to leave a room, to go to the bathroom, we were not allowed to leave facilities, and there was nobody else there except for us. And there was a period of time at their retreat, it was pretty much just us behind steel gates. And I wasn't sure at a certain point that we were going to be allowed to leave. We were secretly interrogated. Our things were searched. We had no privacy. I was trying to work out a collaboration because I work with several physicists in this country and neuroscientists doing experimentation on what this is called psychokinesis or telekinesis. And I tried to set up collaborations when we were over there. And there was something really off. I don't know whether it's the state of our politics today that's causing some anxiety. I don't know what it is. I do know this is a particular field that has been very well researched by the Russians, particularly, KGB or FSB, and also CIA. So I guess everybody's a little bit interested in it, but nobody wants to talk too much about it.
So you think they might have took you on as students, but really wanted the information you already knew?
Yeah.
How? Well, you certainly got to know Russia.
Well, and the funny part was that we were working so hard all the time that I had a grand total of, in 2.5 weeks in St. Petersburg, I had 3 hours to do anything touristy. So we ran around one night.
They wanted to break you down.
Absolutely, they wanted to break us down. That was the whole idea. That's what they were working on. And interestingly, by the end of the 2 weeks training, I could walk into a room and all the little paper spirals under the glass vases would start spinning. And I wouldn't do anything, but they were spinning. So whatever had happened with my energy or my ego being broken down probably played some role. But I don't need to do that because I can do that here in the United States without having my ego broken down, and I can still move things.
Do you think that, this is really speculative, but do you think they wanted to send you out with some new energy telephones, so what you learn goes back to them, or they can keep track of you or tune in to what you're doing?
I spoke with a colleague of mine who she's a former nuclear submarine commander, and that is what she told me. So, and that disturbed me a lot. They also managed to, through all of this training, which from day one my back hurt. I've never had back problems. I've never had lower back problems. And my back is now broken, having returned from Russia. The vertebrae is broken. The disc has been totally herniated. There are problems with the nerves. And my spine is now unstable. Now, what the director of this program did one day is she said, stand up. And I stood up so she could do her medical intuitive scan on me. She said, okay, you sit down. So I sat down and she said, okay, here's what you do. You send out white light up your spine, out the top of your head, your crown chakra. She didn't say that because they don't use the word chakras over there. And so I did that, and she said, okay, now you take black energy and you pull down through your head, through your spine. And I did that, but everything in my psychic training, my background, said there's something very wrong with this. No,
really?
No healer, no psychic, no...
Opposite of what?
Yeah. So I don't know what that was. I have been working to correct that, and I believe at this point I'm going to be able to avoid surgery. But it's been 4 months of solid, really working at it.
Nancy, in your world, do you know people who can sort of energetically feel what happened to you and perhaps remediate, or at least identify? And have you
Sure.
done something like that?
I don't know anybody who's done what I've done.
Yeah.
But sure, I mean, I know lots and lots of, the top energy healers and
And what did they say? Or the
remote
whole-
viewers. They've identified issues, but only vaguely with me. I've had hands-on massage therapists who do energy work. They have been able, some of them are outstanding, and they could identify where the issues were immediately. And they helped release some of what I could sense was very negative energy. It's hard to explain. But,
No.
But yeah.
It's visceral.
Yeah.
It's in the body.
Yeah.
So going forward, are there areas you'd like to study further or new coming up that you'd like to investigate?
I want to keep going back to this psychokinesis issue. When you do remote viewing work or when you do psychic work, mediumship, you understand that we're all connected. We're interconnected. We can't separate ourselves, actually. That's the interesting part. It's impossible. We are not isolated islands. And when you begin to explore psychokinesis, you understand not only are the living entities connected, but we are connected with an actual living consciousness in every inanimate object. We're connected. We communicate, and I'm not kidding. It's when I bent that metal, the steel rod that I just showed you, it's solid steel, and the physicists told us it will be impossible to bend. And within 10 minutes, it just melted. And at that moment, in my head, what I was hearing was, bend, now. In other words, you have a conscious awareness of the metal speaking to you, telling you, do it now. There's a particular window of opportunity, and they've identified it's about 30 seconds.
How do you know you're at the window of opportunity?
You feel it.
You feel
There's
it.
an absolute communication with,
So you would look at the steel rod and say, my intention is to have you bend.
I don't look at it.
Well, tell me.
I
Oh,
just
you're
hold
holding
it. But I could be busy talking or laughing with someone else, and but I've set the intention.
You set the intention.
So, yeah. And there are many different ways you can approach it with infusing energy, or there are different things you can do.
So this is what you want to know more of, or
Yeah.
be able to do it more?
Yeah, because that's like knowing the ultimate, answer, which is, why are we here? What's it all about? And what are we all doing together? Who are we? All
And
of
what's
us.
the role of dark energy?
In terms of physics, dark energy to me, and I am not a scientist, but that to me has always been, scientists are very good at creating placeholders.
Oh, interesting.
So it's sort of a tag that they put on an area of which they have no knowledge, but there seem to be field consequences.
So do you believe that dark energy in the form of entities can be in someone and that have to be removed, or are they shadow souls or brightness or light or whatever? Have you run into I don't say multiple personalities, I don't know really what I'm talking about, but unusual phenomena. You get that idea.
Another thing that I have done is paranormal investigations for many years. So I encounter a variety of spirits. I try to avoid negative ones. I'm certainly not interested in exorcisms. I interviewed the top exorcist for the Vatican once, and he was very clear that he's now passed away, but he dealt with very negative energies that had the ability to produce physical effects.
What do you think drew you to this really exotic and interesting series of fields?
That's a really good question. I don't really know. I think even when I had a mediumship experience, I was able to identify a spirit correctly for a woman in a psychotherapy setting. It was a group setting, and I went out on a limb to tell her that a spirit had just walked between us and I had felt them. and I knew the spirit was female and that she was standing facing this particular client. And I told her who I thought she was and what her initials were and her name. And it turned out to be accurate. And so I didn't really believe myself because I'm a very skeptical person. That's why
Right.
I'm known as a skeptical psychic. So I sort of fought myself, and I still fight myself to believe things. But when you get proof, when you get the feedback, it's just phenomenal. I mean, it's true. It's what we call magic, but it's not magic.
Right.
It's something real.
Would you say it's the development of receptivity to different ways of knowing, other than the brain or the touch or the ears?
Yes. You have to, and I've written about this in my book, Psychic Intuition. They did plenty of studies. Dr. Roger Spira years ago did split brain studies, and what they showed was that the left brain, the left hemisphere, is very, very different, and it will actually, if you give something, let's say you have a teacup and you write the word teacup underneath, it will, if you ask the person, you cover up the right brain, right, it would be over there, they will say, oh yeah, it's a teacup. Well, you switch what's hidden and you say, well, what do you see? The right brain doesn't identify language or writing, and it won't see anything. There's nothing there.
Thank you, Nancy. Very interesting. Sorry to have to end right now. So we've learned a great number of things to consider, and that is you can have a life of variety. And certainly she has. She has many talents, and she's willing to take the risk to develop them. First in education, then in running businesses, then back to school to become an aggressive lawyer, and then finally in the world she is now, which is to understand other ways of communication and other ways to change things. So I suggest that you watch this tape again if this interests you at all, and pick one or two of the things that interest you and follow up either in her books, her radio program, podcast, to see where you might go next and see if that's for you. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time. Be kind to everyone you know.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.